A powerful alpha king pretends to be crippled to test the loyalty of everyone in his palace. But when a new maid, Leora, enters his life, she unexpectedly discovers the secret he has hidden for years. As dangerous enemies move through the palace, she becomes the only person who sees the truth behind his weakness and the pain he carries. This emotional fantasy story is filled with suspense, betrayal, hidden power, and a shocking twist when the king finally risks everything to protect her. The Alpha King sat in his wheelchair, motionless, hidden behind the tall velvet curtains of his throne room, listening to footsteps approaching. He wasn't supposed to stand. He wasn't supposed to move. Not even breathe too loudly. No one in the palace knew he wasn't truly crippled. But the moment the new maid stepped inside, something strange happened. She gasped. Not in fear. Not in pity. But as if she could see straight through the lie he'd kept for years. And then she whispered something he never expected, something that made his heart freeze, something that made his wolf stir for the first time in months. She leaned close, too close, and said the one sentence that could destroy everything he'd worked for. She said she knew he wasn't crippled. And she said she knew why he pretended. Before we reveal how she discovered the Alpha King's darkest secret, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss Chapter 2. Things are going to get very intense from here. The palace of Corridon carried a coldness that didn't come from winter. It came from fear, deep, heavy fear. Servants moved quietly, eyes lowered, careful not to draw attention. Rumors whispered through the halls, the Alpha King was cursed, paralyzed, temperamental, and dangerous. But the truth was darker. The Alpha King wasn't cursed. He wasn't paralyzed. He was pretending, testing everyone around him, measuring their loyalty, watching how they treated a weakened king. He wanted to know who deserved to stay, and who deserved to burn. For years this experiment worked. Servants ignored him. Advisors lied comfortably in his presence. Members of the royal staff mocked him behind closed doors, their voices dripping with fake sympathy and hidden ambition. And the king watched, silently, unseen, unreacting. Every cruelty was a lesson. Every act of kindness was a treasure. He took notes. He waited. He planned. Sometimes vengeance was slow, but always precise. But his world shifted the morning the palace hired a new maid, an ordinary girl with an ordinary background. No noble family. No political alignment. Just someone who needed a job badly enough to clean a palace known for swallowing people whole. The girl, named Leora, stepped into the palace wearing clothes too thin for winter and shoes that had seen better days. But she held herself with quiet confidence, the kind that didn't come from money or power. It came from surviving things she never spoke about. Her first moments inside the palace surprised everyone. She didn't stare at the gold-coated doors or the marble floors. Instead, she studied the atmosphere, the unsaid fear, the rushed footsteps, the way conversations died whenever a guard walked by. It was as if she could hear things others couldn't, things hidden behind walls. Her job was simple: dust shelves, sweep floors, replace candles, stay invisible. But invisibility didn't suit her. There was something about the way she carried herself, calm, observant, almost painfully aware. And on her first morning, she was assigned to clean the king's private chamber. No one wanted that job. Not even the bravest wolves. Rumors said people who annoyed the king disappeared. But Leora stepped inside quietly, almost fearlessly. The king sat in his corner, wrapped in his thick fur cloak, hands resting on the wheels of the chair. Motionless. Expressionless. His gaze fixed on the balcony window as if he didn't notice her. But he noticed everything. The girl didn't rush or tremble. She didn't gossip like the others. She didn't pretend to pity him. Instead, she moved gently, almost respectfully, touching nothing she didn't need to touch. And then, midway through dusting, she stopped. Paused. turned her head slowly toward the king. Something changed in her eyes. Recognition. Realization. A quiet understanding that shouldn't have been possible. The kind of understanding that made the Alpha King's wolf rise inside him, alert. Because she looked at him as though she knew the truth. The truth that could destroy kingdoms. The king remained perfectly still, exactly as he had practiced for years, but inside, something cracked. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was curiosity, sharp, unsettling curiosity. Few people had truly looked at him these past seasons. Most only glanced long enough to pretend they cared. Yet this girl, this new maid, she studied him with the focus of someone who knew secrets. She didn't flinch at his presence. She didn't rush through her work. Instead, she moved as if she were listening to something no one else could hear. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was her heartbeat. Maybe it was something far more dangerous. But she kept glancing at him. Not in pity. Not in disgust. But in understanding. And that made the Alpha King uneasy. For years, he had maintained his deception with surgical precision. He had allowed the kingdom to believe their ruler was too weak to shift, too broken to lead, too ruined to fight. It made their true intentions surface. Every betrayal, every lie, every wicked ambition revealed itself the moment they thought he was powerless. Loyalty was rare. Integrity was priceless. Genuine hearts were almost extinct. Yet this girl's presence brought a strange warmth into the room, soft, unfamiliar, and unexpectedly honest. A warmth he hadn't felt since the night everything changed, the night the kingdom nearly killed him. Leora continued cleaning slowly, almost too slowly. She wasn't clumsy. She wasn't distracted. It was deliberate. Careful. And her eyes kept returning to him, as if she were trying to judge something invisible. The king found himself tightening his fingers on the chair handles. The smallest mistake could ruin years of secrecy. But she didn't look like a spy. She didn't look like a threat. She looked like someone who carried burdens of her own, burdens far heavier than her thin shoulder suggested. Still, she seemed to sense his unspoken tension. She hesitated near the table, placing the candle almost too softly, and took a breath that sounded like someone preparing to step into danger. And then, she did something no one had ever done. She walked behind him. Everyone else stayed in front of him, terrified to be near his back. Superstitions whispered he would lash out uncontrollably. Stories claimed he had strangled servants when startled. Most were lies. Some were not. But Leora seemed immune to palace rumors. She stepped close enough that he could feel her presence warm the air behind him. He felt something stir within him. Not anger. Not fear. Something more primal. Something that made his wolf lift its head. She moved with the confidence of someone who wasn't afraid of him. It was unsettling. Too bold. Too dangerous. And yet strangely comforting. Just as she reached for the drapes, she froze. For a moment, everything in the room went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. She stepped forward again, until she stood so close he could almost hear her heartbeat. Then she leaned closer to his shoulder. Too close. Too knowing. Too intentional. And in that moment, the king's breath nearly slipped. Because she whispered, barely audible, words he wasn't meant to hear. Words that made his pulse kick. Words that made the wolf inside him snarl with recognition. Words that revealed she knew something about him, something he'd buried beneath layers of lies, pain, and fear. She whispered it like a confession. Like a warning. Like she wasn't supposed to know it. Loudspeaker mid-story CTA, as you required. Before we reveal the meaning of her whispered words. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. And when she straightened up, the king realized something terrifying. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't cursed. She knew he was hiding his true power. But the most unsettling part wasn't what she had discovered. It was how confidently she carried that knowledge. As if she knew he wouldn't harm her. As if she believed he couldn't. And that was the moment the Alpha King felt something he hadn't felt in years. A threat. A spark. A shift in fate. The king didn't move. He couldn't. For the first time in years, his mind was not the quiet, controlled space he trained it to be. Instead, it spun with questions he had no answers for. How did she know? How could she possibly know? He had revealed nothing, not a slip, not a twitch, not a careless movement. Yet this new maid, this quiet girl with worn shoes and tired eyes, pierced through the illusion as if it were made of glass. Leora, unaware of the storm she'd ignited inside him, moved across the room with the same careful grace, but the air around her felt different. He felt watched, not with suspicion but with understanding. And that frightened him more than any threat. Understanding was dangerous. People who understood him never survived long. He observed her quietly as she arranged the curtains and dusted the ancient carved panels. She performed every small task with a tenderness that suggested she cared about more than her salary. It was strange. Most servants did their work with robotic repetition, desperate to leave quickly. But Leora looked like she belonged there, as if she respected the space, even the silence. Perhaps that was what made her dangerous. Yet beneath her calmness lay something else, something he couldn't name. A faint sadness lingered in the way she moved, a heaviness in the way she breathed, a quiet sorrow that clung to her like winter fog. She carried wounds she never mentioned, scars that didn't sit on her skin but deep inside her spirit. And somehow, the king could sense them. It was unsettling to feel connected to someone he didn't know. Unsettling, and alarming. He wondered again. How much did she truly know? And more importantly, how did she know? Leora paused beside the bookshelf, fingers brushing over the spines of old records and ancient laws. She lingered there a moment too long, and he knew she sensed something in the room, maybe the tension, maybe his attention, maybe the weight of his thoughts. Then she did something unexpected again. She knelt. Not to him, not in fear or submission, but to pick something from the floor, a small, fallen object. She examined it carefully, almost protectively, before placing it on the edge of the table as if she understood its value far more than she should. The king felt a faint sting in his chest. No one had touched that object for years. No one dared. It was a relic from the night his kingdom betrayed him, the night that led him to fake his weakness. That she treated it with reverence, it shook something inside him. He watched her more closely now. Her gestures revealed fragments of a past she never spoke of. Every movement whispered a story, loss, resilience, survival. And suddenly, he wasn't just curious. He was wary. Because people who hid pain well often hid truth even better. Halfway through her cleaning, she paused again. Her gaze drifted toward the king, lingering on him longer than before. For a moment, something passed between them, something silent and electric. He sensed she wanted to say more, to reveal the source of her knowledge, but she held back. She wiped her hands nervously on her apron. A crack in her confidence. A human flaw. A sign that she was not as fearless as she seemed. And just as she turned to leave. Loudspeaker mid-story CTA. Before we reveal what happened the moment she stepped toward the door. Remember to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. Leora stopped. Frozen. Not by fear, but by instinct. The king felt it too, the shift in the air, the faint vibration in the floors, the smell of approaching danger. The palace. Walls whispered something dark and approaching, something hungry and ruthless. And then, footsteps echoed outside the chamber. Not friendly footsteps. Not servant footsteps. Footsteps with intent. The king sensed the presence instantly, someone he hoped wouldn't cross paths with Leora. Someone who must never learn that the girl knew too much. Because the person approaching was capable of killing her without hesitation. And Leora had no idea she was seconds away from crossing paths with the most dangerous enemy in the palace. The footsteps grew louder, heavier, more deliberate. Leora didn't move. She stood close to the door with her hand still resting on the wooden frame, frozen by instincts she didn't fully understand. The king, though motionless on the outside, felt every sense sharpen. This was the moment he feared. This was the moment his secret, his weakness and his strength, would collide. The air thickened with danger before the intruder even entered. It wasn't the kind of danger one could see. It was the kind one felt deep in the ribs. The kind that warned, whispered, and demanded silence. The king recognized the presence instantly. It was the royal chancellor. A man who pretended loyalty yet dripped with ambition. A man who would kill without hesitation if he sensed a threat. A man who would destroy Leora simply for standing too close to the king's truth. Leora sensed it too. Her breath shifted. Her shoulders tensed. Her heartbeat quickened, soft but detectable. And the king, despite being trained to ignore everything human, felt his own chest tighten in response. The chancellor stepped into the room with the slow confidence of someone who believed the palace belonged to him. His eyes scanned the chamber, searching for disorder, searching for weakness, searching for opportunities. Leora kept her gaze lowered, but her spirit stayed unbroken. She didn't shrink. She didn't tremble. She stood tall in her silence, unaware that her composure alone was a threat. The king studied the interaction with cold calculation. Every second mattered. Every movement counted. One wrong breath, and Leora would be dead. One wrong glance, and the chancellor would uncover everything. As the chancellor paced the room, his boots scraping the marble, the king saw Leora's fingers twitch, a tiny motion, almost nothing, but enough to reveal she was preparing to run if needed. Her instincts were strong, but fleeing was impossible. The chancellor was faster, crueler, and unforgiving. He circled the king's chair for a moment, inspecting him the way a wolf inspects injured prey. The king remained still, perfect in his deception, but his wolf roared inside him with increasing fury. He hated pretending to be helpless. Hated watching Leora stand in danger. Hated the silence he was forced to maintain. The chancellor moved closer to Leora, examining her like an object, searching for weakness. She didn't look up. She didn't give him her fear. She simply adjusted her apron, steadied her breathing, and pretended not to sense the threat pressing against her spine. But the king sensed everything. He felt the moment when the chancellor's suspicion sharpened. He felt the moment the man reached a conclusion he shouldn't reach. He felt the moment danger turned lethal. The chancellor stepped toward Leora with intent, cold, decisive intent. And that was when the king broke his own rule. For the first time in years, he moved. Not fully. Not obviously. Just enough. A subtle shift. A faint tightening of his fingers on the chair. A whisper of strength he was never supposed to have. Leora noticed. Her eyes widened, not in fear but in understanding. She realized he was trying to protect her, even if he couldn't move openly. That small movement changed everything. It saved her. Because the chancellor, convinced the king was still helpless, dismissed the moment and turned away. The danger passed. But the truth hung heavy between them. Leora finally stepped back from the door and returned to cleaning, as if nothing had happened. But inside her, something shifted. She now understood the burden the king carried. The loneliness. The caution. The exhaustion of pretending. And the king, he understood her too. She wasn't ordinary. She wasn't naive. She wasn't weak. She was someone who saw what others ignored. Someone who felt danger before it arrived. Someone who treated a broken relic with respect. Someone who treated a broken king with humanity. When she left his chamber, she paused for just a heartbeat, quiet, soft, intentional. A silent message passed between them, unspoken but powerful. She would keep his secret. And he would protect hers. Two strangers bound by truth neither asked for. Their lives would never be the same again. Moral of the story. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who suffer in silence. And sometimes the ones who appear the weakest carry the greatest power. True loyalty isn't shown when someone is strong. It is revealed when they appear broken. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. And hey, tell us the country you're watching from in the comments. We love connecting with all of you. Thank you, and also check our old videos.